to join us today for the webinar, An Easier Way to Get Lean Six Sigma Training. I will first address some logistical issues for the session and then introduce our speaker, Rick Haynes. A lot of material is planned for this 1-hour webinar, so the audio will be muted for the remainder of the presentation to ensure that we are able to get through the entire presentation in the time allowed. We will not be able to hear you, but you will be able to hear Rick. So do not let this stop you from sending us text questions through the system during the presentation. We value your questions. If Rick cannot answer your question either during or at the end of the webinar, we will either email you or call you with a response. There will also be a recording of the webinar available on our website within 48 hours at smartersolutions.com. You will receive an email with a link to the recording. And please note that as a participant in this webinar, someone with Smarter Solutions will be giving you a call or reaching out via email. And if you do not want this contact, please let us know in the feedback survey at the end of the webinar. I will now introduce our speaker, Rick Haynes. I'm here today with Rick in Austin, Texas. And Rick has over 20 years of Lean Six Sigma experience as a practitioner, and he is one of Smarter Solutions' senior instructors. Through his career, he is certified as a Master Black Belt, a Black Belt, a Champion, and a Yellow Belt, along with teaching and certifying professionals in all the Lean Six Sigma areas. His personal Lean Six Sigma work has spanned nearly all business types, including manufacturing, transactional, research and development. And he's also worked in all levels of the business from entry level up to a site engineering manager. Rick's life experiences and skills will provide you with an engaging discussion today. Again, thank you for joining us for the webinar, a new, easier way to obtain your Lean Six Sigma training.
Thank you, Alon. Looking excited to do this. Thank you for attending, those who do, and those who watch it recorded. Appreciate that too. Today it's about Lean Six Sigma and what Smarter Solutions has done to change or reformulate our training program, and we think it's some advantages to people. Now, not everyone understands what Lean and Six Sigma is, so I'll start there. What is it? Well, you could just say by name, it's Lean and it's Six Sigma, but I think what we'll find as we go through that, it's actually bigger than that now. As Six Sigma and Lean started on their own as uniquely different stuff. If you worked in a large corporation, you would add a Lean department and a Six Sigma department, and they both really struggled for control of the improvement efforts in the business. It's got to the point that they really, and I think probably ASQ started it, but they've joined together into a single improvement organization. But in doing that, they've generally also included a number of other things. We'll get through some of that, but it really is a combined training of how to improve almost anything. Now, it is important, and now you'll see if you read a lot these days, that Lean by itself is still popular. Six Sigma is, but not near as strong as Lean, but Lean Six Sigma is probably the more popular of all of these, except in current writing right now. For some reason, people think Lean is the answer to everything again, like they did maybe 15 years ago. But it is powerful, but in itself it's not completely sufficient. And what do we teach? Like I said, we teach Lean Six Sigma. Now that's different from what you might see as called Lean Sigma, which another consultancy has, which is you lean out your process and then you do Six Sigma improvement on it, which I think time has shown is not a good improvement methodology. What really is seen as the best right now is blending the Lean concepts with the Six Sigma concepts and others, such as theory of constraints, to do a single flow or methodology to solve any problem. So now what we teach has got a bunch of branches on it. Depending on what you find, it leads you to the best tools. But whatever, they're all about saving money, working faster, getting rid of problems, and making your customer happy. No matter what you're doing in the realm of improvement, it probably is one of those things, of course. So your speaker right here believes it really doesn't matter what tool you use. The goal is to solve the problem. Now, as we go further, Alon brought up using the interface for GoToWebinar for questions. I am actually a teacher. It's probably my primary job. So I am great with interruptions. Alon will interrupt me with questions that are right with what I'm talking. She will save some till the end. But feel free to type them in as you think about them, and we'll answer them. All right? Keep going. What's good Lean Six Sigma training? Now, again, this is our company and my personal point of view, but you should cover the full body of knowledge that is expected. Now, we use the American Society of Quality because it's probably the most widely viewed one, but there are other ones out there that people write up to justify their training. But this is probably the basic one everybody should follow. You will find there is no qualification to be an instructor, and you could probably teach basket weaving and call it Lean Six Sigma, and there's nothing wrong with it. So there really is a full range of stuff out there, so it's worth looking to see what they do. The next one is they should probably use real software. We use Minitab, but there's others. There's JMP. The next tier down uses basic Excel or simple Excel add-ins. Now, I do know there's a couple good add-ins out there that are probably equal to the stat software. You pay a little bit more for them, but I think they're also acceptable for training. One might be, I think it's Sigma Excel. Alon probably wouldn't think about it here, but that's what I think is pretty good. But basically, if they're using a homemade Excel add-in, it's probably not as good as you could get for training. Wow, look at that one. It went off the screen. I don't understand that one. So, that's really weird. Who knows why they're doing it? So I'll just read them to you. One is you have a project to get certified. If you don't have that, it's risky. It should include coaching, something to help you get certified. Anyone that you're completely on your own, it's really difficult to get good training unless you're in a company that has support staff. If you have other black belts, master black belts around that can coach you through your project, you'd be okay. But without that, you really need someplace that gives you a lot of interaction with your between the student and the instructor. That was really weird. I can't say I've ever had that before. So what are the training? We're going to talk primarily here about green belt and black belt training. But I want to speak to now what we believe they are. I had a coaching call today with a lady, and she was asking, really, what should I do, green belt or black belt? And there isn't an answer to that question necessarily. We can talk about what they are, and I think you make up your own mind. But green belts, like I said, you could do basket weaving and be at Six Sigma or call it Six Sigma. Everybody can define what green belts and black belts are. I have seen consultants and companies that a green belt's just a project helper. And I've gone to the other spectrum where I worked at one time. Green belts were really big old independent problem solvers. You can be anywhere. So it's a good question to ask a provider. We treat green belts to become problem improvement team leaders. So somebody who can solve a problem themselves. So that's what we want for a green belt. So our green belt training's a little stronger than some would be. It's expected somewhat, though, you're a subject matter expert where you're working your improvement project. Generally, that's your area of expertise. We give you the tools to solve a problem in there. Most green belts need to have a support network to help them on the complex things or things outside of their specialty. Generally, that's in a black belt or a master black belt. Sometimes it's me as their instructor. And they should be able to understand and perform basic analysis. Not complex, but basic stuff. The concept is they're already there. It's like a manager, an engineer, support staff for an area. That's who they're working with. Now, black belts are really the next amount of knowledge higher. The expectation for a black belt, a Lean Six Sigma black belt, for most everyone now, that's probably the most standard of all of them, is that they can go out and perform improvements in any part of a business. That's outside of where they're an expert. You could be in manufacturing, and you're going to go be successful in HR, in finance, in sales. You could be from sales and be successful in operations. That's what's expected of a black belt with a good program. You can go anywhere and work. All right? The next bullet's important. You have no prior knowledge of the business, but you've been taught with the extra black belt stuff how to learn enough to actually solve the problem when you weren't an expert. And I know in my role, it's one of the funnest parts of the job is gaining the extra knowledge of how something works. Because every time you do it, you learn a little more about business and makes you more ready for the next one. Black belts generally need very little help from more senior practitioners, such as master black belts. Most black belts get help from subject matter experts to help explain and understand parts of the process. And the black belt should be able to do more complex data analysis, handle more complex data that's got more bad data points in it, that comes from associated sets. You have to match it together. It's just a higher level of analysis is usually available for black belt. Now, the one that's not really part of this lecture, because we didn't really change that here, is what's a master black belt. Master black belts are really the top level of certification in Lean and Six Sigma. You're assumed at this point you're a senior black belt, basically. You can be successful anywhere in a business, fixing just about anything. And I like my comments. I mean, I'm tooting myself here, but they can even improve executives and senior business processes because they've got an extra cachet or ability to work in the very senior levels that a black belt generally doesn't see. They can develop and manage their whole improvement program. They can back up black belt, green belts for complex analysis and change management skills. And a lot of them can teach. I think the big difference when I speak to candidates or students or in sales is that black belts are still taught to look downward into the business and figure out the process. Where master black belts, really their job is not to look into the process, to try to look upwards and ask, why are we doing this? What's the impact on the company? So really master black belt's more of a business position than it is a process improvement position, but you still have to work with them. And generally everywhere you have to be a certified and experienced black belt to attend these courses. So now I like poll questions. I mean, again, we like to collect data and see what it says. The first one comes up here. How tough is it if you were to go right now, pick which course you would need to take, say black or green? How difficult would it be? Is it an obvious choice down to nearly impossible to figure out which one's right for me? So if you get to pick one, if you would pick it, and Alon's collecting the data with the interface right now, and let's see how we doing. At least nobody thinks it's impossible. Well, that's good. I mean, at least you've heard me talk, and I guess you wouldn't be here if you had some idea what you're doing. So Alon, if you get another couple seconds and close the poll and post it up so we can see. There you go. Most of the people are on the upper end think they can figure it out. It's probably why you're here. So I guess if I was to try to sell you on why you should work with us, it's because we are so good. Not only will you know what you want, but you'll get a good copy of it. You'll really learn something. But some of this is coming up really for the next two down, confused and not sure. I hope to help clear that up by the end of this webinar. All right? We go back to our lessons. Thank you, Alon.
Sure thing.
Any good questions coming up yet?
No questions coming up, but you definitely can submit a question through your interface on your screen.
All right. Why do we train the way we train? I guess I've been doing training here at Smarter Solutions. This is the third people I've trained for. By far the best material I've ever seen. Most complete. Required somewhat less of the instructor because the material's put together well. But it's always been green belts, 2 weeks of training, 1 week a month. Black belts, 4 weeks of training, 1 week a month. And why? That's a great one. Why? You guys can put up your ideas, but the hard part of the answer is one we hate to see as black belts. It's always been that way. I talk to my peers, I go to conferences. All I know is that's the way it was selected back when the very first stuff was done back in the 80s. I guess it's really early 90s. But let's talk about how it got to the way it is a little bit, because I guess I'm an older guy, so I like to look at the history of it. But black belt, the term came in the 80s when Motorola started Six Sigma. The concept was is they were getting the person with so much skill, it was like in hand-to-hand combat against the business to solve problems. What's interesting is there were no consultants. There were no training classes, really. You were internally trained. In other words, when I did it, I guess 87, 88, in that range, they handed me a qualification card that had a checklist of the skills that I was to acquire on my own. I had to learn how to do regression. I had to be able to apply it. My supervisor had to sign it. I had to learn change management. I had to apply it. My supervisor had to sign it. Because I remember 25 to 28 different things that I had to go learn on my own, gets to apply it, and my supervisor signed it. When that was completed, I could submit for black belt training, which was a one-week course in Schaumburg, Illinois with Motorola, primarily about change management and the whole Six Sigma concept at the time, which was DPUs, Sigma levels, and some of that unique stuff that's not used anymore. But really, it was so different than it is today, and you were a black belt, and a black belt was to be a helper for other improvement teams. There was no improvement. There was no COP-Q or any of the other terms. The black belt was never the team leader. You were a facilitator. I actually was an engineering manager of my site at the time, run as a black belt to help people in my organization improve stuff. So I did analysis for them. I pointed out things, showed them how to collect data, but let them do most of it. What really came around in the 90s then was General Electric decided they wanted to go do it, and there's a lot of stories about Jack Welch and some of the early people from Motorola getting together. Well, at that point, it was a consultant-driven model because most of these folks had retired from or left Motorola, and they were trying to really make money now. Well, consultants make money training people. They don't make money doing stuff because there's such a multiplier with students. So they had to come up with classes. And they started with black belt. And they said, well, what would that be? They made a list and made it a four-week, in some cases 5 weeks, once a month. And then they started, well, that's not enough. They ended up wanting a little bit less, became a green belt. Then they started yellow belt, white belts. There was champions, master champions, master black belts, and all these built so that they can make money training people.
A couple of questions, Rick.
Oh, drop one on us.
So when you talked there about the weeks, how many hours does that translate to?
Most training I've ever done, I guess all the ones I've ever done is Monday at 8 a.m. through 5 p.m., 4 days a week at that schedule, and then Friday's generally a half day so people could fly home in the afternoon. So that would make 35 hours a week generally for each of these classes. Okay. I think that's what it comes to. And that's what we use here at Smarter Solutions too.
Sure.
Is there another one? Are we ready to go? All right.
So we do have a couple other coming in. One attendee asked, he's at a company, or so to say, at a company that does not have Lean Six Sigma that allows opportunities to work on a project during training.
Really?
Do you have options for that or suggestions?
Well, what you saw on an earlier slide is the one that didn't display well. But all the good training programs require you to run a project as part of your training. And this goes back to, I think it's called the Kirkpatrick method of measuring training. The first one is they can basically repeat it back to you. That's the first level of assessment. The second one is basically they can take a test at the end of the week and get it. And then you're asking them how they feel about it would be your next level of testing. Then you have to not only do you feel good, I guess, then comes the test. And after test comes application. And the reason we have the project is reach the third level of engagement of training. You can learn it and repeat it, maybe even take an exam, but until you can apply it, you probably haven't learned. So the good programs have realized that if they do not run an improvement project in parallel to the class or close to it, the learning is not as good. So think of the power of learning something in the week and then for the next 3 weeks trying to apply it, showing back up at class and say, here's what worked for me, what didn't, let's talk about it. That's why good programs have projects. There are some that I will call not good that require things like they call it a capstone project, which is really the fancy name for a research project or a paper. There are some that give you a simulation that you're supposed to do an improvement on a simulation. Those always frustrate me because, okay, I'm an engineer type. The hardest part's dealing with people. I would do wonderful if all I had to do was change simulation programs. When you have to change people's behavior and you have to deal with a history and work with processes that are making real money, that is probably the more difficult part of running Lean and Six Sigma, real improvement. You can't really experience that with a coach unless you're doing a project with your class.
That's really good, Rick. So on that topic, before you really get into the meat of what you're going to be presenting to us today, one final question here on certification exams. You just talked about doing the project, but what about the exam? Some ASQ perhaps doesn't have a certification exam where International Association for Six Sigma may have an exam.
That's interesting. Exams. The industry has gone a couple different ways. You'd have to ask yourself, what does an exam really examinate? I guess that's, or examine. But there's a couple ways to do it. Smarter Solutions has decided a final exam is not really fair in the realm that you have paid, where a consultant, you fail the test, you're done. It just doesn't seem right. What we have opted to do is using examinations to identify weak spots to be coached. Our model is to have an exam at the end of every week covering the topics of the week that were key. The ones that you missed, failed to answer the questions right, your instructor works with you between training weeks to make sure you understand it when you arrive in the next week. Now you get to ASQ and the international whatever, and these organizations that really only exist to make money. They don't want to teach class. They want your money when you got trained somewhere else. So ASQ started out as a place there. That organization was about providing a standard certification for everybody in the industry. They started with a Lean Six Sigma exams because there was money in it. And the difficulty is it's a multiple choice test you can't take with a computer. So they cannot ask anything except basic knowledge questions and working stuff out by hand, which has got something to do with Lean Six Sigma training, but it misses a huge amount of the body of knowledge, which is really doing analysis, dealing with people, driving change that is sometimes not a multiple choice question. Now, they get around it by asking you to provide paperwork if you've actually solved 2 problems or run 2 projects. That's their allowance to not have to question you on it. But that's the way it goes. And people put tests to make you pay money to get recertified. I don't know if, I don't believe myself that you need an exam to be a good black belt or green belt. You just need to know the stuff.
The Smarter Solutions certifies by judging projects.
We certify through completion of the class and all the coaching, which is successfully getting the concept. I guess we call them quizzes, and completion of a successful project. Okay. That's certification.
Great. Well, we are eager to hear the new options.
Well, I think we're a slide early because I got a couple more. But the traditional method, where was I got lost in it. Oh, yeah. Black belts were 4 to 5 weeks. At this point in the 90s, black belt was a specialty skill that if you got trained, you went in a special group, and all you basically did full-time were improvements. Green belts came a little bit later when there was people that liked the knowledge but didn't want to be a full-timer. So what they did is they created green belt as a subset of black belt. The voice of the customer said 2 weeks, not 4 weeks, so they fit it in. Generally, green belt classes feel a bit rushed because there's a lot to cover. Most companies implemented green belt when they had enough permanent black belts to run the big stuff. This was the little stuff that the black belts weren't generally doing. I know that's changed over time. A lot of companies now start with green belts because they don't want to have their people in 4 weeks of training. Most of us end up doing black belts anyway. Now, Master Black Belt came about at the same time when companies got tired of paying consultants, so they created Master Black Belts. I don't know if that's exactly right, but that's my side of the story. Master Black Belts became somebody who was trained to take over for the consultant so you could quit paying them. They were generally your top black belts, people that loved improvement, and they were taught how to teach. They were given a little extra analysis schools or tools. They went back to a couple of classes, but there really wasn't a curricula for years. It was just the better people got an extra certification, and at some level were teachers. That's when I got my first one. I was a black belt. They just said, you're going to be a master black belt because you can teach, because I had been teaching statistics. They basically just anointed me and said, go do it. That's the way most of us master black belts got it in the 90s. But Smarter Solutions has a fantastic course, my favorite course to teach, but it is really one that targets people that are going to take this role. But that's not really the gist of our conversation today. Now, what are the problems with what I described? At some level, you had to pick your training path. Was I going to be a black belt or a green belt? And if you actually went green belt, then black belt, you could end up with up to 6 weeks of training to go through, because there really wasn't a way to become a black belt from a green belt in the transition, which is really what we're going to be talking about soon. And a lot of people did this. One of the master black belts that I've become friends with out of Smarter Solutions started that way. Took green belt because that's all he thought he wanted, learned he loved it so much, went back through it again as a black belt, another 4 weeks, learned a whole bunch more, because now when he had the topics, he'd seen it once. After a year or so, was doing so well, went to master black belt to really get good at it, because it was somebody that had just fit them. I mean, there's people, one of our other instructors said in the first week of his green belt class, he goes, I'm going to be a master black belt because this is me. People do feel that way. Now, the advantages of the current training model is consultants make more money. Now, being a consultant, that's not necessarily bad, but we're trying to find a way to blend that need. We want to stay in business, and the students need to learn right. So here's what we're going to be talking about now is our new training model, which we think gives a couple real advantages to somebody who wants to get into process improvement. We have reformulated so the first 2 weeks is a green belt class. You go through the material. You know enough to do basic process improvements. Now, if that's all you want, you're done. You get coached and you get okay at it. You have extra skills at your job. It leads to potential promotion. But let's say you want more. You want a role as a primary improvement practitioner, or you want to really leave your current genre, your work area, your specialty, and go work somewhere else. Maybe you want black belt. What you would do is go to an additional 2 weeks. So what we do is we go over the key areas in the green belt topic that green belts are weak in or stuff they want to see again, and add all the extra pieces so that you really are now able to go work anywhere in business or even work in a new industry. So that's really what we're talking to as I go through the rest of us. Now, Master Black Belt, we didn't talk about the 2-week course in 2 months. We also offer, for those that don't like traditional classroom training, an online training. You can get black belt and green belt with interactive HTML. We call it blended online because it comes with a heavy level of coaching, so you get to talk to someone. It can be very successful. I'm going to come back to that because we really will allow an online green belt to convert to a black belt also. So here's our new training model. Now, we may speak new. There is a couple other companies out there that have done this, but they've always been a small amount of the major training out there. And I guess until in the last year, I've been against it. But as I watch students through the online training and some of our classroom stuff, I realized I was being stubborn and an old-timer and really need to open up the advantage of this model, and I've been sold. So really, here's what we do. 2 weeks of the green belt training. You learn the basic define, measure, analyze, improve, control, or the DMAIC thing. It's really a 70% solution. Now, you can stop here and be successful. But then for the black belt, you would really follow the next month later, the next 2 weeks of classes again. So you end up with 4 classes in 4 months if you want to go straight to black belt. But what I realized was in going through people that are successful versus people that struggle, is sometimes you need to hit some of these subjects twice. Learning it and then coming back a month or two later and seeing the lesson again really reinforces the learning. When going black belt straight through, we always found some of the key areas were not being, I won't say taught as well because I was doing, but were not learned as well as they could have been. But when we saw some of our online students, the advantage was they would go back and relearn certain topics again. A month or so later, they realized they didn't get it all. And now we have the opportunity to take that model, which is retraining a little bit to the black belts. We expect to get a lot better student out of this model than we got before. So what have we done? It sounds as simple as relabeling classes, but it really isn't. Forrest Breifogel, the owner, and I sat down and we took our whole roadmap and mapped out and scored which tools we thought green belts needed, which black belt needs, which stuff needed 2 or 3 times of training. And we have now created green belt as our primary course. Up to this point, it was black belt. Green belt was, yeah, we also teach that. We just took lessons out of black belt, shoved it together, made it a course. But now we've reset green belt to be a primary course that flows together better. By streamlining, we can have some unique green belt focused lessons. We focus more on the how and less on the whys. I mean, this is how you do it. The black belt will talk a little bit more of the theory behind it so you can apply it in a more general sense, but it's really more about how. And the nice thing of Smarter Solutions is the reference books we hand you are the same ones we use for Master Black Belt also. So you still get a full reference of the well beyond the body of knowledge for a black belt at a green belt course. We do cover the ASQ, green belt body of knowledge, but you're ready to go after this course. Because of this, we rethought our black belt course also. Because again, what we want to do is assume you came in with the basic DMAIC knowledge. What would we want to add to that to make you a spectacular performer? Well, first of all, we identified concepts we thought were black belt only. We still had some green belt topics we knew students struggle with. We added those to the class because hearing them twice would be a benefit. And we had a little more lessons learned because at this point most of them have seen what may have worked and not worked, so we could spend time talking about some of the entanglements and troubles you see that the lessons don't nearly talk about. But it's nice because now our students have seen the method once, we're adding to it. And in the end, we still considered covering the entire body of knowledge for black belts. What this gave us, and if you have questions on that, this would be the time to ask, but what this gave us was a couple options. You can do only green belt. You can do green to black direct. But the neat one is the third bullet. Students can work as a green belt and upgrade to a black belt later with just the 2 weeks of an add-on course. So it really allows you to be a green belt, be gone for 3-4 months to apply it, try it, then come back and finish up. It's less of an impact on your business. You're not gone so much. It also gives you a chance at some level. It's like a first date with Six Sigma with the green belt. If you find you really like it, you can come back and have a better relationship. Or maybe that's enough and you're ready to move on. You just got skills to do your job better, but you have a couple choices. Dig into that a little bit more. There is still also non-classroom options. Not everybody wants to sit with an instructor for 4.5 days. The advantage of the non-classroom is there's no travel. You can learn at your own pace. Positive things. The problem with the negative of that is that your own pace may mean your personal time. Who do I ask questions to when I see one, and I end up at my computer all day? Why do I want to sit at it longer? But we find that that's really successful for some people. It's probably the person that drives the success more than the material at some level. But we do tell people that are very successful, you have to treat it like a project at work and put something on your calendar and work on it every week. Now, with this online or the non-classroom versions, there's a couple options, and we like the third, which is called blended online. And I think blended online is what the industry has said is the best, which means it's not just on the computer. You blend it with another modality of training. There's the most common one is the one above it, which is blended with a classroom session. So we use an online training piece to eliminate some of the classroom session. Most of the places try to limit it down to 1 week in the classroom for a black belt course. All right. Now, it's okay with that. It just means there's less travel, but you still travel. There are some that are pure online. I think Villanova is probably the biggest one of them. They don't even use HTML. I think more of a distance learning. You watch live lectures and email if you want help on something. But you don't ever really talk to somebody. You're pretty much on your own with those. And I guess I would call that the distance learning more than the pure online. And there's some pure online. The cheap ones are voice-over PowerPoint slides, which are very boring. What we use is a blended online of interactive HTML with one-on-one coaching sessions. So you get somebody to email and talk to if you need to get through the course, no matter where you are in the world. That's the option. Why I'm covering that is it really gives you the option to do an online green belt pretty quick. You like it, but you want more, you can go to the classroom session for an add-on. And even if you start our online sessions, they're identical in content to our classroom. And we have a couple people, don't we, Alon, that find out that because of their job requirements, they just can't make time to do it, and they convert over to the classroom, right?
Yeah, we've got converts all the time.
Yeah, and that it's more about they can't fit it into their job than the person, but that's a nice thing about work, and that they have identical material in them. So if you go so far, you can drop into the classroom session at an equivalent point. But it also allows you to drop into our added 2 classroom sessions for a black belt and get that certification too. If you've got some company, we'll accommodate most anything that we think you can be successful with. Now, that leads us to our second polling question. What do you think, this is like a marketing question, I guess. Given you, if you were looking at new training, which one of these would be opportunities you think that would be good for you or your business? Now, I'm sort of asking how you like the 2+2 model and the online stuff, but please check the more than one if you think they would be acceptable to you and your business. All right. So if I look at this, we're getting a little bit of everything. That's good. So people are open for a lot of options.
Options are
the
good.
2+2 is looking up, and Alon laughs about options being good. I mean, sometimes you don't know what you're going to be doing in 4 months, what your business will be able to afford it. Somehow taking 2 weeks at a time sounds like it might be easier to get through the training approval cycle too. If you'd close it up here, Alon, and we'll see how people are doing. I am happy to say the winner at over half of you like the 2+2. I guess that's where I am now too, that I would have been the traditional one probably up to about 6 months ago. So it's great. Maybe you're seeing the value that it took me a long time, but I think there's a big value of this STEP training. So thank you for that. If you'd send it back to me, Alon.
And Rick, we have a question about Yellow Belt. We haven't mentioned anything about Yellow Belt. Is that something Smarter Solutions offers?
We have a Yellow Belt class. We do. Well, let me see how to word this. Yellow Belt is not a course that we generally teach as a public course that people show up to see. Our course, we have 2 different versions. One is a classroom version, which takes 3 days, which teaches you how to understand improvements and do some basic lean improvement stuff. It's like a light lean course. Yellow belts vary in what they mean to a lot of companies. Sometimes I was one, it was just a helper. Everybody on a project team became a yellow belt so they could understand it. I worked at another one that a yellow belt was a simple improvement leader, which is sort of what we've lent to here. We also have an online yellow belt that's not coached, just to get through the material so you get a basic understanding. But some people also have what they call white belts, which is an awareness course from 2 to 4 hours. Yellow belt courses run from probably 2 days to 5 days, depending on who you take them and how much they want to cover. But there really is no standard there. And we're not talking about here because mostly those are classes that a company that's gone to serious and improvement methodology adds those classes for the people associated with the program. That's why we're not really talking about it.
Okay. But we do have a method. So for this attendee who wants to do yellow belt, then green belt, then black belt.
You can. Right
That's
now,
an option.
everybody considers black belt and green belt to be starting courses. They're all set up across everyone. Those are places where you start, and that's why some people go, which do I choose? Like a lady I was talking today, where do I start? The hard part is most people picked one, and that was all they ever did. Like I said, I don't know if I've known anybody that started yellow and moved up to green. They either wanted to do it or they were just interested. So I guess you can. We do have a Yellow Belt online course. It strikes me it's about 20 hours long. That gives you the basics of what it is, but it doesn't really teach you to go do anything. It's more of an awareness course.
Gotcha.
But it's still nice. So
That's right.
I'm going to go on. How did we break up the class if you have been black belt trained? How do you break it up into 2 plus 2? So this is a real high-level look at what we cover in our green belt now that we've reformulated it. Week 1 is define phase, which is how you define the problem. You learn how to understand the business aspects of your problem, why they need it fixed, how it's measured, and it's about creating your project. The measure phase comes up later in the week, which is, I don't know, measure was picked before I got here, but you're really assessing your business process to understand the full scope of the problem, or you're taking measure of it is probably where it came from. This is where you collect data. This is where you collect ideas. This is where you build flow charts. You walk the process. You do value stream maps, tools such as that to understand the scope of the problem. If the goal of week 1 for your project, you generally have a list of ideas that could be the drivers for your problem, or we'll say the causes of the problem. So you then would have 3 weeks, once we've taught it, to go back through your business, exercise these tools, to come back for week 2 with a list of potential causes. We think these might matter, and a green belt may have a list from 5 to 10 at this point. These are possible ones. We don't know, but that's our best idea. With week 2, what we teach you how to do is to collect evidence and to test those potential or possible causes to see if they really are causal. Because some might just be there. They might be bad beliefs. Not bad, it's not fair. It might be beliefs that aren't true. But we teach you how to analyze data, collect data, and turn those potential causes into probable causes. Probable mean I have evidence to support the belief that if I change this, the problem will improve, get better. Then comes the improve phase, while we teach you how to take the ones that need to change and build a plan to take the current state of the business or process and move it to the new state. Now, with a green belt training, it's going to be a relatively simple process to look at it. Taking the current process is executed to a new place. You will then identify the change plan. What do I have to do to build a plan to actually drive the change? And the last piece is the control phase. That's something that Six Sigma added new to process improvement that hadn't been around, which is how do you put a system in place to ensure the change remains in place? If you've been in business for a while, you realize you fix a problem, and in generally one life cycle of the staff, it'll be back again in 3 to 5 years as everybody slowly replaces and moves on. That means you didn't institutionalize to be a word, or didn't put a system in place to keep the gains. And that's what the control phase is about. That's green belt. At this point, you can run a simple project. So you can execute the DMAIC methodology to solve problems. You can apply Lean and Six Sigma, depending on what's appropriate, to solve the problem in front of you. All right?
Hey, and that question, and then Cindy just asked,
yeah.
We can provide, obviously, the green belt, black belt training on site as well. We do instructor-led, but we can do on site. But as far as the online, they're only provided in English currently.
Oh, that's not exactly right.
Okay.
Right now, I think the black belt and green belt course, the yellow belt course is in 4 languages, I think. Strikes me, now you can catch me wrong, I'd have to look it back, but Spanish, Portuguese, a simple Chinese, and maybe one more French. The black belt and green belt courses, every lesson, there's about 15% of the lessons that Smarter Solutions created. The other parts we leased from somebody else. The ones that we lease are in 3 to 4 languages. The ones that we created are just English, mostly through the use of the mini tab, but it is a blend in it. Being that most of it's read, if you're even reasonable with English, you can take the course as a non-English speaker. We have people taking our online courses in Europe. I don't think we have anybody in Asia yet. And South America. I don't think we have. They've been in mostly, the non-English speakers have been French from Canada, French from France, Germany. I could say somebody from England. I don't know if that's English or not anymore. And Finnish, I believe. But we've had a handful of people outside of the country. Those are the main languages. They had no problems with it. And they spoke English at a business level, not necessarily fluent, but enough to get by in business. All right.
Okay, some more options.
Yeah. There we go. I guess the bottom thing, not only at the end of the Greenbelt class, you can use these tools you learned to just do your job better. It's not always at a project. Now, if you come back for the Black Belt course, whether it's right away or at some point later, what we do is we go back over the measure phase, because there's some there's some tools that are less often used but are very good in special cases we teach. We talk a lot about the lessons learned, about dealing with the human side of collecting ideas. We talk more about measurement systems and some more detailed analytical tools. I should have gone back in Greenbelt alone. I forgot to say, most of the lean concepts are taught in the Greenbelt course. It's really more of a Greenbelt topic. We cover a little bit of it in the Black Belt, but you get a majority of the lean concepts in that course. If you're looking to be more heavily lean, that would be the Greenbelt piece.
Good to know.
After we get that, we get more analysis. We talk to a couple deeper levels of analysis. We talk about why. We talk about what bad data may look like, how to deal with common issues you see when you're looking at data. And the reason we do this is, if you already understand that piece of the business, you will see it in the data. But if you're walking into a different part of your business, you're less apt to be able to discover things in the data, so we teach you how to do that more in the Black Belt class. Plus, you get a logistic regression, a very good tool in that class. When you come back in week 2, our assumption is you're now doing deeper analysis. In the second week of the Black Belt, or 4 weeks of the total Black Belt curricula, we do some more analysis. We talk about design of experiments, which is an analysis tool but also considered an improvement tool. We go a little deeper into lean workflow analysis, because there's some things you can really dive deep into it if you believe you have workflow issues. And a lot more human side of improve. We spend time on some real creative tools, the 6 thinking hats, a little more deeper into organizational change management. The assumption is you're really more in an area that you don't know anybody, you don't have their trust. You have to do a lot more convincing to drive change. And in the control phase, we go through a little bit more of that, but it's not very much in this when we get to the Black Belt class. We talk about more lessons learned and examples of ways you can do it to give you some good varied view of it. And that ends up being our Black Belt curriculum. In the end, you have covered the entire body of knowledge as a Black Belt as you would have covered in our old training model. We just did it in a different sequence. Which leads to, why should I go get those last 2 weeks? Why not stop at 2 weeks? Well, a couple of things we threw together here. You enjoy process improvement. If you're the kind of person that likes to know why and figure stuff out and loves to fix things and help people, that's enough. That's enough to get you a Black Belt. One is, if you really look at this for a stepping stone to another career move, green belts are nice, but Black Belts are something that people will hire you into a completely new field if you have that training. So some people use it so they can change. And the one I got, there's probably the third one, you just like learning cool stuff. Because it is pretty neat. If you're an analyst in your job, these Black Belt skills can make you a fantastic analyst, because now you can see more than just the data. You can see the process, how it's used. There's a lot of neat stuff in there. So that's probably what I talk about our curriculum. But it leads to the next thing. Now that we've split them up, can I upgrade? And yeah. What we are offering here, which I think is unique, are the other ones we surveyed that have this part of our market research, We couldn't find anybody that will allow you to upgrade a green belt that was taught by somebody else. So in other words, you had to take their green belt to take their update. And Smarter Solutions, we sat down there, mapped all this out, what the body of knowledge is, what we thought people from other training sources might miss, and we've decided that anybody can do an upgrade to a black belt given a couple basic requirements. You see, they were trained on the ASQ body of knowledge for a green belt. Now, if you went through a real cheesy one, there's, I think, even in Austin at the University of Texas, they have a 1-week green belt class that basically just lists to a week of lectures and they certify you. That probably wouldn't be enough. It should have required a project for certification. Even if you didn't certify, it should have been a class that was targeted for that. And you notice we don't require you to be certified. We just require you to have completed the training. It should be a full 2 weeks of training or 80+ hours on an online course. And it should have required some use of statistical software. Again, we use Minitab on our course, probably one of the best ones out there. But if you learned using pencil and paper and Excel without an add-in, you're probably not going to be that successful when we got into the deeper analysis. Now, this does leave that you can take our online green belt and then update it. Now, if we think you've been, we'll probably interview you if it hasn't been recent. If we have a couple, let's say it's been 5, 6, 7 years since you took the course, you're a little weak. We have a couple plans that we have written down here for people that needed to upgrade yourself before you show up, whether it's some book reading, a couple of online lessons to get you ready for the course. And if you have not used Minitab, we have an online Minitab introduction course to get you ready. So what we might ask is, depending on how far away it might be, a free addition of some extra stuff, we might ask a little bit of fee to do a little deeper preparation for the class, so you will be successful. But we believe we found a way for most everybody who took a reasonable class, whether they certified or not, to go become a black belt in 2 weeks. Again, that's the heart of what I was going to talk about of our sessions. The last video is talking about our course in general. We teach out of a series of 4 books. Volume 3, written by Forrest Breyfogle, our owner, is the heart of the DMAIC process. It's got soft skills, hard skills, well beyond the body knowledge in there, and that's really what we teach project improvement out of. We use a roadmap, and you see this color-shaded thing you can't really read at the bottom. That's our roadmap for solutions. It tells you how to solve most anything. On the book on the upper right is our project execution guide. It's got the roadmaps and examples of every step along the way as a reminder. We give you binders with all the course slides that you saw. We do not give electronic copies of the slides, though. I guess the next question here is, if you're thinking about taking a course, it just helps us understand. Now, is it soon, before the end of the year, next year, sometime, or maybe you're not looking for a course at all? Just give us a little idea where you are. Looks like we're split. Most people are way in the future, not looking for a course. It's just nice to know. Now, Alon's probably laughing at me, but I think like the first person clicked on one of them and it made it look like 100%, but now that we've got more people, it's spread around all of them.
It is pretty spread.
It's the risk of small samples, I guess. So if you just give it a second, close that one up and show us all. Looks like a nice little histogram here with in 2015. Well, it was the winner when I looked, and I think it tied in the end with 2014. Yeah, it's always tough guessing. But you did see we got a little bit of everything. Still hope you enjoyed the course, even if you're not looking for a course. But thank you for your input. Give it back to me there. The last one I'm going to end with, if you choose to get in this field, learn more about this, one thing we stress to all of you is there's way more knowledge than you can ever take time to learn. You need some level of continuing education. Now, whether or not you ever take a course from us, and maybe you just like process improvement, on our website at www.smartersolutions.com, there's a resources tab. If you go to it, this is the header on it. But we have blogs to read if you just like to see postings. A couple of us write them. I write one that's really about black belt, master black belt level questions and answers and topics that are of general interest to me. We've got articles that you can download on almost every piece of process improvement. All of our old webinars are on there to watch. There's some neat ones about how to pick a provider. There's stuff about scorecards. One of my favorites about logistic regression. They're just topics we like to talk on. There's glossaries of this Lean Six Sigma world. There's Forrest favorites in the middle, which are just things he thinks are important, stuff he likes to write about, and a lot of other stuff. There's recommended reading, which are some of our best or favorite books outside of Lean Six Sigma to read. It's just a nice place to keep up on stuff. But the purpose is you got to keep refreshed. The world changes. That's why we're changing our course. I guess that's the end of what I have. We've talked about what is it, what was traditional, what we're now doing, a little bit about the curricula and what our advantages are. I guess the last minute for questions.
Yeah, Rick, we have, obviously you have done an excellent job with this presentation. We have people interested in learning more about our courses, specifically getting pricing for the courses.
First of all, I'll tell you this. Our website tells a lot about the courses, the content. I think from there you can download some about our actual curricula. I don't think we've fully updated the website on the difference in black belt change yet. But what you get for each course is still exactly what's in the course. I haven't broken up the course content to remove the green belt out of the black belt one yet. So you still, if you look at the black belt course content, it lists what you get in both courses.
Correct, as far as online.
Well, on the website says
yes.
right now too. For the prices, at some level, see, where are we? I think, now I'm going to tell you list prices because I'm not a salesman. But I think our black belt, when you take them both together, it's right just under $10,000 with all the materials for the online, about half that for the black belt. But I know it's a little better than, or the green belt, sorry.
Half for the green belt.
So, and I think if you do that 2 plus 2, it's probably half plus half. But if you're really interested in exact pricing, I also know we run specials. I think, Alon, did you have a coupon in something we just sent out recently?
We did.
We offer discounts for different things. If you call up, just ask.
Yeah, and the prices are also listed on the webpage. The list prices listed on the webpage.
Yeah, the list prices. But do you ever pay list? I shouldn't tell you that. But those are the basic prices. We are competitive with everybody, but we give you a better class. Correct. Other questions?
We do. And I probably should call Forrest in on this question. This is his heart. But what is your opinion on BPM, Business Process Management, and utilizing Lean Six Sigma in conjunction with BPM?
That's an interesting one. Business Process Management is a new title for something that's always been there. At some level, it's what re-engineering was in the 80s. BPM is a term, Business Process Management, was created by software vendors at some level to try to sell software that could create software-driven analogs of human processes. Now, if you pick up the body of knowledge from Business Process Management, it would say that Lean and Six Sigma are an improvement methodology you should use if you deem your current process to not be acceptable. Now, acceptable for time, cost, or quality. But they sort of see BPM as a way to more build automation and standardization into human processes. You may have seen them. BPM would be like when they converted, if you did to Oracle or some thing that you have now, a totally online handling of purchase orders and payments and stuff. BPM drives you to more of a software-driven management of your processes, where you log in, see what's done, register, might provide you all the documents. It's got timers. It actually manages your process for you. It's neat, but they're seen as partners. BPM itself never improves. It just standardizes and automates. Where Lean Six Sigma is its sibling to help you improve the things that are not quite adequate. All right. Another one? Or are we about ready?
Well, it looks like we have hit the hour, Rick. So
okay.
Awesome webinar. Thank you for everything that you have done to reformulate this class. And we look forward to contacting you in the future.
All right. And again, there's an exit survey we ask you to take when you get off the webinar. Please fill out if you choose to opt out and don't want us to ever talk to you again. I think you have an option to say something like that in there. But please, if you have any further questions, email us at info@smartersolutions.com or me at rick.h. I don't think I have it on here. Or if you go to our website, there's a contact us form. You can send notes, give us a call, anything. We'll help you out. That's about all I got.
Thank you.